Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am Kyle, and I am very happy to announce that we have a special guest aboard for the opening night of our NFL Draft Week, and that is Adam Aniba. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, and you can find Adam at the band G Report on Twitter. He's a Skins fan and writer. He has a bunch written out. He a late round kind of scout, but he specializes. He has a big 25 board ready to come out here soon. And first things first, I know we all know about Chase Young and the number 2 pick. That's where we all think the Redskins should go. But I
Of
want to
course.
pick your brain, Adam. What do you think the Redskins should do with that 66th pick? Because that is a very valuable pick there.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. Just by looking at, what's going to be available and what our needs of, the first three positions I think everyone's going to think of is tight end, wide receiver, and offensive tackle. And, there's definitely some tackles that are going to be available in that round, but I think as it stands, we actually have two fourth rounds. The second coming is the compensatory pick at the end of the fourth round. I think what we need to keep in mind is this Trent Williams trade is going to go down. It's going to go down in the draft, most likely somewhere towards the end of the first round, probably closer to when the second round starts. My opinion, I think we'll probably be seeing some kind of package with third, fourth round picks. So when you're talking about that, you're talking about players that should be available, like Adam Trotman, tight end Dayton. Again, he's a small school that spent a lot of time. Another tight end that I really like, I don't know if he's going to be available, is Cole Kmet. Those two guys, unfortunately, what I feel like is teams are going to be reaching on tight ends. I have probably late second, more appropriately third round grades on some of these guys. But again, with the lack of true talent at tight end, some of these guys are going to be, selected earlier than they should. So what I personally think at 66, I just think wide receiver is going to be the best value. And I understand a lot of fans are, tooting their horn about our receiving court, but let's be real. Terry McLaurin, he's our main guy. As much as I like Sims, I loved him coming out of Kansas, and as much as I like Harmon, you know, we're talking about a bunch of second-year guys. So I think we're still going to see a veteran probably added in the second wave of free agency coming up. So count on that coming out. But as far as some of the receivers we could see, a couple of the guys that I think that we could possibly see in that range are, players like Denzel Mims, wide receiver Baylor. A guy that I've been really high on that I think is going to drop is Bryan Edwards from South Carolina. He
Yes,
had a
sir.
broken foot training for the combine, and we've seen in years past, it doesn't have to be a big deal. These little injuries, we saw what happened with Geis. Granted, some might be regretting that about now,
Right.
but some of these minor injuries do drop the prospects. And even though everything so far sounds good, there's no medicals that are being done. So, Bryan Edwards is a stud, 6'3", 212. This is the type of receiver that's really gone under the radar because you
Mm-hmm.
think Debo Samuel, how he was used by the 49ers. This is how Bryan Edwards was used at South Carolina. Anybody has any questions? Tune into the Alabama South Carolina game from last season. That, in a nutshell, shows what this kid can do. So he's definitely someone I think that's going to drop. You have other prospects like another one that I'm really high on is Chase Claypool, wide receiver from Notre Dame. There's been a lot of discussion about him potentially being a tight end wide receiver hybrid, but you're talking about a guy that ran in the 4.42 range at the combine. So I think there's no reason that this guy can play the X or the Z on the next level. So Chase Claypool from Notre Dame is definitely a guy I'm really high on, and I think that if he's available, and I think he will be available, he's someone to keep an eye on. Another guy I also like, a lot of people have been actually having rated higher than Claypool, is Michael Pittman out
Yes,
of
sir.
USC, 6'4", 223, more of your standard possession type receiver. But it's a really deep draft when it comes to wide receivers. So I'm just spinning out a couple on my big board that's going to drop probably tomorrow. Then before the draft, I'll make sure it's going to drop. But again, it just shows you the wide receiver talent is going to really be the best value probably at 66, because just think that you're going to see a big run on wide receivers and offensive tackles in round one. But what you're also going to see is, surprising to many, is 5 to 6 quarterbacks are probably going to go in the first round. And a lot of people have talked
Hmm.
up Jalen Hurts as, a late second, third. quarterbacks are a valued commodity in the NFL, especially if you can get one on a rookie deal in the first round with that fifth round option. That
Yep.
fifth round option is gold. So you're looking at guys, everybody knows the typical Tua, Herbert, Love. But, there's also guys like Eason, Hurt. So, you could see, like I said, anywhere between 5 to 6 going in the first round. What that's going to do is going to create a domino effect going into the third round. We're really early in the third round, which I'm so happy about, because you start to get in the latter portion of the third round, you start to, drop off a little bit with the receivers. They're still going to
Yep.
be there. But I think receiver, personally, is going to be your best value there. There might be some tight ends, tackles, but I think we're really going to see some great value for receiver at pick 66. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on when we get to that point.
Yeah, and I have said multiple times, I absolutely love Bryan Edwards' film and the kind of tape that he puts out. I love his tenacity and his physicalness at the wide receiver position. And, from years past with Jonathan Allen and like you said with Darius Guice, the Redskins have benefited from some sort of injury diagnosis going into the draft. Letting
Sure.
guys fall there. So Bryan Edwards falling to the Redskins at 66, I think is a slam dunk. And so let's piggyback off of that mindset there. And so thinking that they do go wide receiver at 66 here, Adam, now looking at pick 108, that first pick in that fourth round there, what do the Redskins do there? Because they're most likely, like you had alluded to, they're going to have breadcrumb picks of tight ends. And that's
Right.
with Troutman being gone and then most likely Cole Kmet being gone. So you're talking about guys like Harrison Bryant, Hunter Bryant. Who do you think in that grouping of tight ends would the Redskins go within that fourth round?
You just right off of the bat. Those are the first two that I had in that range. And then also I have Albert O. From Missouri,
yep.
the 6'6", 258 tight end. What really surprised me about him is I liked his film a lot more from 2018 when Drew Lock was his quarterback. I think we saw the best out of Albert O. I think he took a little step backwards, but I think it had a lot more to do with the offense and the quarterback play. When this kid really puts it together, I think he's going to be really good. And I think there's no reason to think that he's not going to be available in the fourth round because, like I said, there's going to be better value at wide receiver and probably even offensive tackle in the third, early fourth round. So you mentioned the two, Hunter Bryant, Washington. Love this kid. He's looked at as more of this tweener, 6'2", 248. But don't let the lack of size fool you, because if you turn on the tape, this kid is a willing blocker. Do you want him inline blocking at the line of scrimmage? That's where I question it. And that's why I think you're going to see someone like him drop. Harrison Bryant, he is the definition of a flex tight end. I don't like to do comps too much, but I see Jimmy Graham. And Harrison Bryant, maybe not quite as fast, maybe not quite as athletic, but I think he's the type of guy that is going to be able to come in and really help someone like Dwayne Haskins. So although the tight end group is not nearly as talented as we've seen over the last 5 drafts, there's no reason to think that any of these guys can't come in and have some production. And I say that because I think the kind of offense that we're going to run with Turner Jr., I turned on a lot of the Carolina film. The last 4 games really is where he was given the offense. After Rivera was fired, good old Norv handed the reins over to his son and really let him go. And looking at the games, if you get stuck on the yards, if you get stuck on the plays, the loss of yards, the bad plays, you're not going to see anything. It's the little things. It's putting his receivers in motion. McCaffrey, just imagine the way they use McCaffrey. Don't think it's a coincidence that we picked up McKissick just for depth. No way. I think McKissick makes this team, and I think there's a vision there that he wants to really utilize the strengths of our running backs, and I think bringing back AP to mentor was a great idea. And Darius Guice is such a mystery right now, but I think Love. A lot of people are trying to lump Love and Guice in the same injury, question mark for coming into this year. But, Love had a Heisman runner-up season back in Stanford before he hurt his knee at the end of the year. He has had nearly 2 years to recover from that. There's been no setbacks. There was a report that he had a surgery. He had a cleanup. Cleanups are so standard. Other teams don't even report most of those cleanups, but it's Washington, so they always do. So I think Love is a guy that's really going to be able to come in and help Turner do what he wants to do in this offense. So granted, it takes time for tight ends to maturate to the NFL level. I think a couple of the guys that we've mentioned, I see no reason to think that they're not going to come in and have some success. And keep an eye on Logan Thomas. A lot of people were upset that we didn't, go a little more hard on free agency. I think after the Cooper failed signing, I think what they're trying to do is trying to build something. And I think he's the kind of tight end that has that athletic ability. But number one, what I liked about him is what I saw from his blocking ability. He's not going to be counted on right away to be, a big producer of yards. He's going to be more focused as a blocker. So I think by bringing one of these tight ends in and basically just asking them to play receiver for the most part in the beginning, I'm not too worried that any of these guys can come in and have success, because if you look around the league, a lot of these tight ends, Kelsey, Kittle, these were under the radar guys. These were mid-round guys, and this is exactly what we're talking about. So granted, they take some time to get going, but I think we'll be okay in that department.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. I'm a Virginia Tech fan. My family has been for all my life. So Logan Thomas is a name that I actually know well. And last year I had TJ Hawkinson in my fantasy league, and I kept seeing Logan Thomas stealing his points away. And I kept saying, hey, what is he doing? Who is he? Why is he making a comeback? And look, him in a Redskins uniform is going to fit because, like you said, in Scott Turner's offense, they like tight ends, and they like to have 2 or 3 tight ends on the field at all times. And so it would make a lot of sense for them to use one of those 4th rounders on one of those tight ends there. Me personally, I think Harrison Bryant is probably the better blocker of those sets because unfortunately that it seems to be an ongoing theme in this draft that the tight ends just nobody can block.
They don't teach it in college. It's bottom line. They want to blame it on, that they're not good blockers, but I think that's short-sighted. I think you have to be able to go back and watch these college offenses. That's why, listen, YouTube highlights are great, but what those don't do is those don't give you the full game film. If you actually, take the time and watch a game beginning to end, and you kind of see what kind of offense are they running, what are they asking that tight end to do, you have to look for the little nuances, their feet. What are they doing when they're out in space? What are they doing when another receiver catches it? Are they looking to engage? Are they, trying to go down the sideline? These are the little things, and I'm glad you mentioned Bryant, because I did see that. It's not that he's not a willing blocker. It's just at Florida Atlantic, he really wasn't asked to do it.
Right.
So I think what I really want to see is more size. I think that's one thing that our tight end group has lacked, speed and size. And I think with Logan Thomas, we instantly added size. I don't have as much confidence as the one we got from Green Bay, Rodgers. I think he's been injured 2 straight years. At this point, if he makes the team, it's a plus. I think he'll be competing with Hedges, the kid we got signed late in the year from Alabama.
Hale Hentage.
Yeah, they'll be competing to even make the roster together. But you will see 3 or 4 guys. But I definitely think you'll see one of these guys. And, don't be surprised if, just like I said, the receiver, another free agent becomes available. Cap cuts are going to come after the draft. It always happens. And, don't be surprised if a decent tight end comes out. Might be a little long in the tooth, a little older. But I think they're going to be just fine in this aspect. I think receiver, big playability is what they need to focus on. And I think with the talent at wide receiver in this draft, if you have multiple mid-round picks in the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, I think you'll be able to get a few guys. And I think with the depth at receiver, and, like I said, I look at the small school prospects, there is more depth than people even know about, because they look at these draft boards, they look at these mock draft simulators. And a guy who told me, he said, you did Ernest Edwards. If he's so good, why isn't he on there? Easy question, because a lot of these boards are not going to look at a ton of small schoolers. You're going to get a few of them, but you're not going to get a ton of them. Gandy Golden is one of my favorite small school wide receivers, okay? But I turned on the tape with him, and great size, great ability. But then you have the guy I just sat down with, did an interview and write up on, Ernest Edwards from Maine. This guy was quiet his first 3 years, totaled just under 1,100 yards, 15 touchdowns. More about Maine's offense. They basically said, hey, this is your team, let's go. In his final year, he equated for 1,100 yards and 20 touchdowns. He finished the year with 42 touchdowns, leading the nation, I think, nearly 30 yards per kick return. I asked him, I said, if you were so good with the kick, did they talk about punt return? He said, I can do it just the same. He says, I have no fear when that ball is in the air. The coaches just want to be limited in that aspect. So fans just need to keep in mind the reason, they always talk about undrafted people coming out of nowhere. It's not always nowhere. There's only so many picks. There's only 7 rounds, and teams are going to pick, for need. A lot of times after the first, second round, there's going to be more need picks. So you're going to see a ton of talent that's going to be out there in the undrafted market. So I'm not worried. I think this Dwayne Haskins is going to get weapons. It's not even confidence in Rivera. It's Kyle Smith. That's where my confidence lies, because I really like what he's done in the last couple drafts, and I think they know how imperative this year is for Haskins. Unlike Daniel Jones, unlike other rookie, second-year quarterbacks, even Drew Lock, who I actually liked more than Haskins. I had a higher grade than him. Those guys are going to be given a long leash. They get 2-3 years. Haskins, yeah, as much as I like him, he's going to get this year. If he really doesn't have a good season, they're going to go another direction next year. I'm pretty sure of that, because this is not their guy. So I think that was probably the deal with Rivera and him, that he promises he's going to give him the year and see what he can do. So far, I don't get caught up in these hype videos, but I like what I see from Dwayne Haskins. I like the drills he's doing, because people are so caught up in these 5-step dropbacks and this and that. That's not what players like Mahomes, Rodgers are doing. They're doing these silly jump passes and these things like you're saying. Why are they doing this? Why are they training to do this? Because that's real NFL. Because real NFL means no matter how good your offensive line is, pockets collapse. So I have confidence if we get the running game going, we add more speed, this offense will be just fine. But the defense is what's going to keep this team going.
Oh, you're absolutely right, and I really do believe in the fact that if Dwayne Haskins can do his best Alex Smith impersonation next season, he will be the quarterback of the Washington Redskins for multiple years. Just taking care of the football, extending the drives, making sure we're getting third downs and scoring touchdowns. And that way you'll be a great quarterback for the Washington Redskins, because look at Rivera's offenses over the years and look at their defenses. These haven't been real flashy teams, which is mostly beat you into the dirt and then play good enough defense to not let you score points. And so that when people sit here, and I know they've been doing this all offseason, but every time they don't see a free agent popping off the screen and the Redskins not getting them, this isn't what Rivera has done. Rivera believes in his system, and that being said, believing in Rivera's system, I'm going to blindside you here a little bit. They have 3 picks, 2 7th-rounders and a 5th-rounder, the 5th-rounder being at the 154 spot. Is there a guy in that range that you feel fits the Ron Rivera mold, the kind of hard-nosed, physical kind of football player that you would stand on the table for?
2 guys that I really like. One is we're talking about tight ends again. Is even if they do go tight end in the 4th round later, I see no reason why, if they have the value there at tight end later, they shouldn't jump on it again and double dip. I like Colby Parkinson from Stanford. Talent wise, I'm not going to say he's where Jason Witten was, but the full body of work, what he looks like, 6'7", 252. He's a big boy. This guy showed that he has the ability to block. But one guy that's really jumped out the screen to me, I did a write-up on him back in December, was a name that most people don't know about, but he actually lit up the Senior Bowl and was actually invited to the Combine, is Charlie Tempua, Charlie T, Portland State tight end. He is definitely more of a hybrid, just like Bryan, 6'2", 240. He was actually used multiple ways, a lot of times flexed out, but I look at him as a true H-back, and I think that we could see the team going back to that, because you talk about keeping 2-3 tight ends on the field. I see no reason why one of them won't be an H-back.
Right.
And traditionally fullbacks are fading out a little bit this league, but they're fading out because they're finding more tight ends to do more work like that. And Charlie T is the definition of someone I could see probably sitting there available in the beginning of the 7th round. At the Senior Bowl, he actually was clocked to going 18 miles per hour. They just asked him on the first 2 days, run a go route. Let's see what you can do, because they want to see the flex tight ends down the field. And he blew a lot of people away with this flat-out speed because, 6'2", 240. I just watched the tape, and one thing about Portland State is that offense was all over the place. But, I saw all kinds of gadget plays, this and that, but the constant theme was the plays were always breaking down, and Charlie T was always there when the ball was in the air. So he'd be somebody that I would, I think's going to drop, and I'd pound the table if he's sitting there at the 7th round. But again, he's just one of many.
No, look, and it's always good to have an emergency plan, right? And just in case if the Redskins don't get their hands on a tight end in those early rounds, there's always good to have somebody in your back pocket there.
Right.
A interior offensive lineman that I come across that was, I guess you could classify as a small school guy, that I want to get your opinion on, and that is Cameron Clark. Have you able to watch any of his film?
Just actually, we were talking about him on a show I was on the other night. And,
Mm,
without a doubt, there's definitely holes in his game.
right.
The level of competition is always concerning, especially for offensive linemen. But he's definitely somebody that I think is rising up on some boards. Because, when you tend to hear somebody's name come out more and more, it doesn't necessarily mean, okay, a team fall in love with them. There's a lot of smoke that goes around this
Right.
time. It just means that he's actually getting the attention of more boards. Because, yes, technically boards are set. But there's always those players, especially during this time when one-on-ones weren't able to happen, workouts weren't able to happen. So there's a lot more agents sending film to scouts and teams this year. And I really, from what I've heard, that's exactly what his camp did. And
Hmm.
he's the kind of player that, I could definitely see them looking at, potentially. But I personally think that don't be surprised you see him go somewhere in the fifth, early sixth. Just like him, another guy whose name has really grown is Ben Barch, St. John's University, Division III.
I was actually going to ask about him next.
He he is one of my favorites.
Okay.
There's a lot of linemen in this draft, but after we get out of the first, second round, he is probably my favorite offensive lineman in the class after that point.
Hmm.
I think that he will definitely be available in the third, fourth round. I don't know if I'd go a third round simply based on, as I mentioned, the receiver talent. But with that first or second, fourth round pick, it might be a little reach to some. But we saw Ali Marpet from when Tampa Bay selected him. They
Yep.
reached a little early, probably about 2 rounds earlier than a lot of teams had him. You're going to see a lot more of that this year, and I think scouts are really doing their work this year with the limited contact. So keep an eye for this guy, Ben Barch out of St. John's. I definitely think that that's somebody we could see in the with the compensatory fourth round pick we got. And even if we get some additional picks from the Trent Williams pick, with I know we're going to, if we can somehow get another fourth or fifth, man, that would be an ample time to get somebody like him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought the biggest thing jumping off of the paper at me when I was looking at Ben Barch is he came to Minnesota as a tight end, and
Right.
he stayed as a tight end until 2018. And he's
Yep.
only been a tackle for 2 years. And seeing his strength and the punch coming off of film, it was almost natural to him. And it's a
Right.
spectacle and wondering why it took so long for him to make the transition.
Yeah, yeah. It's level of coach. It's easy. A lot of these on this level, there's a lot of people that are interns and this and that, and they're actually position coaches on this level. So it has to do a lot with basically the schemes they're running. It has to do with development. It's across the board. But this is a guy like you mentioned how he played tight end. I love former tight ends at offensive linemen because they understand the nuances of the defense they're facing. So I actually also think that a lot of teams are looking at him in the interior, not only on the outside. So Ben Barch is a guy that I think you get really good value if you can get him late in the fourth round, fifth round. But again, who knows? It could be like an Ali Marpet situation where someone's reaching up for him and he goes, as early as the third round. So there's going to be talent there. There's going to be a lot of names, and you're going to see Redskins Twitter people saying, "Who is this guy? I don't know." But you can't do that because I spend so much time on film, and every day I'm talking to people, and they're like, "Hey, watch this guy, watch this," and I've got prospects sending me their film. So
Right.
you have no idea how many prospects there are available, and I wish they would go to. People think I'm crazy. Go back to a later round format where they're doing 8 to 10 rounds because I think there's no reason that we shouldn't be doing that because there's so much talent available. And once the draft is over, like I said on the previous podcast that I've been on, there's going to be a rat race for the undrafted free agent market. In
Yep.
years past, you look probably in the beginning of the seventh round when teams started reaching out, trying to set up meetings and stuff like that. Well, that's not going to happen this year. So what they're going to start doing is when somewhere in the seventh round, they're going to start making deals. Technically, that's against the rules, but we all know how sports leagues works, especially the NFL. Teams are going to do it. So you're going to see undrafted players probably have deals before the seventh round is even over. And that's where you're going to have these late round guys that are just going to be able. They're going to probably be on the team before Mr. Irrelevant even selected. So I'm really excited this year. I'm excited for the depth. I'm excited for a lot of the undrafted free agent options, because I think one thing Redskins has showed, if it's Jay Gruden, if it's whoever's been the coach, continually year after year, we've been having undrafted free agents make our team and have valuable contributions.
Yeah.
So I think this year will be no different.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And a credit to the scouting department, because the past couple drafts, they have had some slam dunks in late rounds that have really helped us. You think about Jimmy Moreland, guys like that have really helped the Redskins over the years. Now, I want to ask you something. In regards to the first round, everyone is now come to the consensus that Tua is going to be falling at some point. They don't know how far. But besides Tua, is there any other prospect that you see that could have a drastic fall compared to where people have him?
Probably in the top 10, I think, for the most part, where it's going to be who we think it is. Players like that have definitely climbed up the board. Florida cornerback C.J. Henderson. A lot of people had him in the back end, like the third, fourth cornerback. A lot of people are talking about him potentially being the second after Okudah. As far as maybe dropping a little bit, a guy I really like is Laviska Shenault, from Colorado, receiver. I've been pounding the table with him early on. I have him in my top 5, behind Jeudy, Lamb, Ruggs. He's a baller. He's a Swiss Army knife. He does it all. But, he's had I think it was a core injury, some minor injuries. And again, just like anything, those drop. So I think Laviska Shenault is going to be a guy that a lot of people potentially saw in the top 15 to 20. Possibly, having a little dip into the late portions of the first round. Another guy that I think they could possibly, see later that was looking to go earlier is Grant Delpit, safety out of LSU. There's been a lot of questions, and, I have to go watch some more film on him to confirm it, about his tackling. And I think that's going to concern some teams. But I think the way the NFL is going, a 6'3", 200-pound safety with his kind of range is going to be in demand. But, if there's some questions about his tackling ability. People are talking about him, again, another top 15 to 20 talent. He's another guy that I could definitely see falling. So to me, those two guys are probably prospects that everyone thought were going to go earlier than they were, that are probably going to see a drop to the later portion of the first round.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you on that. And now that you saying that, I've thought about something the other day, Adam, and I want to bounce it off of you. I want to get your opinion on it. If you had to rate this season, which wide receiving core was better between Alabama and LSU, which one would you go with?
I'm biased, but the tape doesn't lie. I'm been an Alabama fan since Chris Samuels was.
Oh, were you?
There.
Okay.
But hands down this year, because Jeudy, Ruggs, you just keep going on. They have, I forgot the kid's name. It's bounced off my head. There's so many names in my head these days. But
D. Smith?
Yeah, that's one. There's another one that's not coming out that they're saying next year. I can't remember his name. It's escaping me. They're saying he's actually going to be better than all of these guys.
Wow.
So I think without a question, it's Alabama. But again, I'll be fair, LSU has really been pumping out some, because I really like Jefferson coming out this year. I think he really made Burrow look really good. And I'm not saying Burrow is not a good quarterback, but I think the hype train has been a little crazy. Anytime you have guys that, break or come close to, shattering passing records, let's not forget, we've seen how many Hawaii quarterbacks break those records. So granted, it's LSU, it's the SEC. He did some great work. But in the end, I don't even have Joe Burrow as my top 5. I don't put him on my big board because we're not looking at quarterbacks. But, I think Young, Simmons, Okudah, Jeudy, Lamb, Tristan Wirfs is my favorite lineman from Iowa. I have them all in front of Burrow. So, don't be surprised if something crazy happens in the draft. But I think the two sure things that we're going to see is Burrow at 1. I think the fact that he's coming out of Ohio to begin with is a match for them, because they're nowhere near, it's crazy to say this, but they're nowhere near where we are as far as building process. I think we've got a lot more going. And when you have a situation like that, you grab a quarterback. People have argued, well, what if Young gets selected by them? If Young gets selected by them, he doesn't have much going on. Geno Atkins he's getting up there, beyond him, they really don't have much. So I think that, when you have that, you're going to have teams, and I think Detroit and New York Giants have made it known that they're open for business. So everyone's talking about the quarterbacks, teams trading up for Tua for this. It's the receivers, bro. I
Yeah.
think that Jerry Jeudy and Lamb, and it just came out. It just came out yesterday. They're talking about Denver, but Mayhawk has said it with the Raiders. I think the Raiders and Denver are two teams that really want Jeudy or Lamb, and that's what trades we're going to see. If we do see a trade up in the top 5, it's going to be for receiver. I think that Tua will fall, but he won't fall as much as people are saying. I think a lot of teams will look at, his upside and being able to get someone him at potentially where the Chargers are at 6. That's where I could see him probably falling. Because I see the Dolphins. Everyone's talking about Tua, the Dolphins. I would not be surprised if they go Herbert from Oregon. So I don't think there's going to be much of a drop for him as many people think, even though from the research that I've done, Tua's long-term career is my question. Again, I'm an Alabama fan, and I saw all the injuries that he dealt with. So even the hip aside, which was the same injury that ended Bo Jackson's career, this is an injury that leads to long-term excruciating hip arthritis. A normal person has between 10 to 15 years before it really gets bad. You're a football player at his size taking hits. I don't see he's going to get to year 4 or 5 if he gets that far. And
Wow.
he's going to have a tough time. So you got to think, if you're going to grab someone like him, you're not going to be having a 3-5 year plan. You better have a 2-year plan with him, because I just don't see a large window for him. But I think that, the top 10, there's going to be some crazy things that happen that we're not even expecting. But the two things I think that are for sure is Burrow goes 1, Young goes 2.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you with Justin Jefferson. It jumped off the film with me as well. With LSU, with Joe Burrow, what jumps off the film to you, CEH. He continues to just ball out in that offense. And I think he's the most pro-ready back in this draft class. I think he should be the first one taken, but it's going to be DeAndre Swift with his athleticism. But Justin Jefferson, I know how easy it is to say, and it's a cop-out answer, but I saw a lot of Odell Beckham in Justin Jefferson's film. I absolutely loved it, and I think at the next level, if he has a little bit more focus on him from a game plan standpoint, I think he has the ability to really explode in a good offense.
For sure. And it's funny you mentioned that, because I definitely see some of that, especially any times he was going for, they're all going for the one hand athletic grabs ever since, OBJ made it, popular. Even their drills, even our guy, Kelvin Harmon, he posted videos of doing, catching the jugs machine, one-hander. But, it's not about circus catches, and these are the kind of catches that receivers have to make in this NFL, because coverage is so tight these days that they have to be able to catch a lot of these balls with one hand. So Jefferson, I saw him do it time and time again. And I think in the end, I like Jeudy, Lamb, Ruggs ahead of him, but I would not be surprised in the end if he potentially is one of the best ones out of the group. Because again, I think that what Alabama had, they probably had, a great stable with them, and they were able to deal with a lot of one-on-ones. And Justin Jefferson had a lot of coverage shifting towards his side, and he still made the best of it. So, it's just scratching the surface of how deep this class is. It's, I've been following the draft now for probably about almost 30 years. And granted, there's been some probably bigger names, higher end talent, but as far as first round all the way to third, fourth round, this is the deepest I've ever seen. So this is what has me confident that Redskins are going to be able to get a true baller, when they decide to go receiver.
Yeah, and I'm really excited about it. The only thing that petrifies me is that the Eagles or God forbid, the Cowboys get their hands on Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb or somebody like that. God forbid, it's going to be that's going to be a thorn in the backside for years to come.
For sure.
But one thing, Adam, before we get out of here, I want to pick your brain, and let's just go off of the mindset that Trent Williams is not going to be returning. We don't know what we're going to get back. But given that we know that we're going to have Chase Young, most likely, what do you think the schedule breakdown, what do you think the win total is going to be for the Redskins next season?
I think there's no reason to think that this team can at minimum double their win total and, have 6 wins. But I just see more upside, and I think that Landon Collins in the hands of Jack Del Rio is going to be – he could definitely be one of these guys is in the race for Defensive Player of the Year. I think that he's going to be used extremely effective. And, don't sleep on the acquisition, the old guy we got, Rivera's old guy, linebacker, because
Thomas
I think
Davis, yeah.
Thomas Davis is going to have a similar, role to what London Fletcher had with this team, and I think that he could quickly, make a jump to, a leadership role. So I think when you couple in a couple of those factors, things going right, but it all comes down to that defensive line and the pressure we're going to get on the quarterback, and everyone's caught up on the stat box, the sacks, but pressures that lead to bad plays. It's a statistic that's slowly catching on, and I think that that's something that Chase Young does well. I think that Montez Sweat, you're going to see him ball out this year. I think Montez is probably going to be one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. So with this rotation, and you're a Hokie fan, so one of my favorite guys on the team is Tim Settle.
Yes, sir.
Having him in that rotation, I think if we can consistently put pressure on quarterbacks, which we're going to see, we talk about doubling, 6 wins. Things go right, you could see 7, 8, 9 wins. And a lot of people don't agree with me that they think, that we're probably battling the Giants for the worst, for the last in the division. I see no reason that the Cowboys and the Eagles can't take a step back. They have not built great depth over the last couple of years. I think that that's something that we're seeing that the Redskins are doing. The Eagles, they're building a hell of a defensive line. And I think right now we're rivaling what they're building over there. So I think there's no reason to think that we can compete for a wild card. With the new rules, they're going to add an extra playoff spot. 8, 9 wins, that can get you in the playoffs. So I think there's no reason to think that we can pull out, 8, 9 wins this year.
Yeah, and those people that are telling you that you're crazy for thinking that prediction, I would direct them to go talk to Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne and tell them that they're only going to win 4 to 6 games this year. Because those guys in particular, they're not used to losing, and they're not interested in sitting around for another year for an early high draft pick. That's not what they came here to do. They came here to kick ass. And I think that Ron Rivera, giving them with some good structure, is going to be a lot better of a team next year. And I think around 500 is more accurate, given that last year so much went wrong with the front office, coaching staff, going all the way down to we didn't know who the QB was and the running back. I mean, with a structured team, with a good leader, and in a phenomenal chess piece in Chase Young defensively, I think this could be a completely different team this year that could more than likely get to 500.
Yeah, I think Del Rio is the one, as much I think Rivera is going to do really well with the discipline of this team, but Del Rio is, to me, he is the X factor.
Yep.
Chase Young, of course, is the obvious one, but I think it's Del Rio. Coaching matters in football more than any other professional sports. So I think by having Jack Del Rio shape this defense, and I'm not huge on comps, but I see Chase Young is the closest to Julius Peppers, and I think that's going to be a lot of the way he's employed. So, deployed. So I think that with Del Rio added the talent we got, again, I think we're going to create a lot of turnovers, and I think we're going to give teams a lot of headaches. So.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And it's smart by Ron Rivera for hiring Jack Del Rio at one of the lackluster spots, the linebacker spot on defense, where Jack Del Rio specializes. And speaking of, I want to finish up here with you, Adam, before we head out. Is there any linebackers late round that we should have an eye on that can do the cover 3, or the Tampa 2 linebacker that can play center field, or a run stopper late round that we should consider looking for?
A guy that I've liked, a lot of people have brought him up, one is William Gay Jr., Mississippi State. I like his size, 6'1", 243. He's somebody that's been, getting, more steam as time has gone on. Another guy that, my guy at the Burgundy Network actually talked to was Davion Taylor, a linebacker from Colorado. He's somebody that could, fall in the later portion. But, there's talent there. Jacob Phillips, LSU, Cam Brown, Penn State. He's a little bigger, more of a pass rushing type. But, there's going to be these kind of guys there. And, it's one thing to be able to project what they think they can be on the next level. But like I said, having really good coaching like we have, you just never know what you're going to get out of these guys, because you might look at them as a pure run stopper, and then all of a sudden they get with Del Rio and they're one of our best, cover linebackers. Yeah. So, sky's the limit. I think we're going to find some real ballers. And I think before Skins fans get upset, because there's going to be a few picks that they haven't heard of, do your research. That's my only advice to Skin Nation is Skins Nation. Do your research on whoever we pick. Between picks, watch film on who we pick up. You'll get excited, I guarantee you.
Hey, yeah, and I'll have to admit, if Skin fans follow Adam and you start listening to what he talks about, they'll be much more educated than where they are right now. To be
Thank you.
frankly
Thank
honest,
you.
of course. Well, Adam, I appreciate you coming onto the podcast and doing a special edition Draft Week episode for us. Your intellect and your input was very educated, and I enjoyed it a lot. I appreciate you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
All right, thank you very much, everybody. Have a good night.